The rules of bowling. Why do they exist? What happens when a bowling ball is approved, and does it even matter? That's really what we wanted to go find out. So we went to the United States Bowling Congress, which is the governing body of bowling, and we asked them if we could do some testing at their location. They were like, sure, you can use our facility and our technology, but here is the deal. You come up with the test, and you can perform the test. So we said, all right, let's do it. We had some custom bowling balls manufactured specifically to test the rules of bowling. We came down to Arlington, Texas. We spent 2 days doing testing, using their technology and shooting content to try to understand why do we have rules, and what does the approval process for a bowling ball look like, and what does it really mean? What would happen if we didn't have rules? What makes a bowling ball illegal? And is there really an advantage to illegal bowling balls? Well, can't wait to show you what we found out. So we wanted to look at the rules that exist in the sport of bowling and have a better understanding of how the USBC conducts those tests. So we asked them to go through the testing and approval process for a bowling ball while we filmed it. What is interesting is that the process takes about 5 hours per ball and is intense, repetitive. Some parts are just plain boring, and honestly, it's all highly necessary to create reliable results. There are some aspects of the bowling ball testing procedure that you may be familiar with. COR, or coefficient of restitution, the coefficient of friction, radius of gyration, differential, mass bias, surface roughness, oil absorption. There are also specs on the roundness of a bowling ball, as well as the size. These make sense in general because look at how easy it was to strike with an oversized ball. It's also important to note that without these specs in place, it would be extremely difficult to have a fair playing environment, or have equipment that could return the bowling ball automatically. Ironically, the ball that has been the main reason why we started asking questions in the first place doesn't hook the most and doesn't absorb oil. What we really wanted to gain the most understanding about was the hardness of a bowling ball. The Durometer is the tool used in bowling to measure hardness, and this tool has been used for decades without much fanfare. Hardness, however, has been a multi-million-dollar emotional roller coaster for the entire industry during 2022. People on all sides have voiced their opinion on what they felt about hardness. Some stated that the hardness of a bowling ball plays a role in performance and gives a player an unfair advantage. Others said that the Durometer is the problem when trying to measure hardness and that it should not be used at all. But there just isn't a lot of information available out there that's relevant to this topic. We actually made a video that talked about hardness, and it shed some light on this topic. It also raised some new questions that we wanted to answer with some better technology and using a more scientific approach. We aren't so focused on the Durometer this time because it is the official tool that is used in bowling, and debating it would be pointless in relation to our goal. Instead, we wanted to focus on the performance impacts and potential advantages of hardness measurements. We have questions like, what does softening a bowling ball do to the performance? Is there an unfair advantage to having an illegally softer bowling ball? Does 1 point of hardness difference matter in relation to performance? Can we measure a performance change with such a slight difference in hardness? The lower limit specification for hardness in the sport of bowling for a bowling ball is 73D. The old spec was 72D. An important note here is that the standard for hardness is measured by the USBC, so it doesn't matter what anyone else's Durometer says when it talks about hardness. The rules are very clear on this. While watching the USBC do the testing, what was a surprise was the attention of detail they took not only in collecting the data, but in checking their own Durometer. They have a very powerful digital microscope that can allow them to see the wear on the needle that does the testing. Monitoring this wear is important, as this can potentially impact consistency and results. Seeing this technology firsthand showed me that they were doing their best to be as repeatable and as consistent as possible when collecting results. We made sure that our custom balls were made with the same core, drilled with the same layout, had the exact same true cut surface, and we used the CTD surface scanner to monitor surface change during the testing, because a bowling ball surface can change during bowling, and that can impact performance. Note, USB-C had no influence on our testing procedure or process, and didn't know the results, as the bowling balls were all coated except for the 27D Hardness ball, because that bowling ball happened to be green, whereas the rest of the balls were purple. We threw the balls 20 shots each in a random order. We had a consistent re-oiling process. We bowled on a 39-foot 3-to-1 ratio flatter test pattern. We found this best to show the results given the balls we had. To be fair, this was not a perfect test. We would have needed months of testing and tens of thousands of dollars worth of balls to get near perfect, and unfortunately we just didn't have that much time. But we did get a whole lot of information that was far better than anything else we had seen available on this topic to date. So what did we learn? Our testing showed that hardness does play a role in performance. In all the different tests that we performed, that consistently stood out. Now notice I said played a role and not made a ball hook more. In certain situations, the total hook decreased with the softer ball, and one thing that was important was that the softer ball hooked earlier and slowed down more than the harder bowling ball. This becomes very important when you start to look for advantages that can be created. Our testing showed that the more your ball can slow down on an oil lane pattern, the greater the room for error or miss room that can be created. Our data also showed that a higher rev rate player could take greater advantage of that miss room created by the softness of a bowling ball. The softer the bowling ball is, the easier a flatter pattern can be to a point. If a ball gets too soft, it just becomes unusable. When you think of early hook, you may think of sanding your bowling ball. We found that sanding the ball does in fact make the ball hook earlier, but it also makes the ball lose axis rotation and tilt faster, which means that this ball will not continue hooking as much as it goes down the lane, and this is not desirable. The softer ball doesn't lose axis rotation and tilt as fast, and as a result, the softer ball can continue hooking for a longer period of time. This is very advantageous when you are bowling on a flatter pattern, and you can miss to the outside part of the lane and watch your ball recover. Look at these two shots thrown by a 500 RPM bowler. They show that a 2-board miss to the right can still recover and strike with an illegally soft bowling ball. If you've got two different rev rate players using soft bowling balls, a high rev rate player will see more room for error and more miss room for the bowling ball than the low rev rate player will. Having the hook in the right part of the lane is key to creating an advantage on a flatter pattern. House patterns have a taper or a lowering of the oil from the front to the back. This does help the ball slow down, and it's part of the reason house patterns are easier than sport or flatter patterns. Our data showed that there was a measurable performance difference in our 1-point difference test as well. Since some bowling balls tend to get softer over time with use, this does mean that they can potentially create an advantage for a player. Our testing has shown that hardness can create an advantage in bowling, and it can be measured as we have shown. We also think that we need rules in place to help regulate this and other components of the bowling ball. So simply put, the reason we have rules is to create a fair playing environment for everyone, and to protect the integrity of the sport. The rules should continue to evolve as more information and technology becomes available, because in the end, you want the best bowler to win based on their ability. I want to thank the USB-C and their research team who let us borrow their equipment and their facility to do this video. I also want to thank the bowling ball manufacturers who helped create the bowling balls for us to be able to do this test. I also want to thank Mikey Pinnell for his help on this project, as well as the people from Team CTD. If you like this video, leave a comment and let's continue the conversation down below. Consider joining our free staff group for more information on this topic and all things related to helping bowlers become better. We are here to help grow bowling, and that's why we always say, Education is creating the difference.